In this tutorial, we'll go through and show you a bit more of the GUI layout within ANSYS 10. To get started, we'll start in the upper left-hand corner. Here we see that we have the ANSYS version as well as the actual data set that we've loaded in the menu bar of the window. This helps us to remember what case we have loaded. Perhaps we're working on different cases. The loading in the current active case is shown up here. Across the top, we have a series of menu bars. One of the new menu bars in here is Create. This has options to create any of the entities that may or may not be within the icon bar up here. So if you don't have an icon, maybe you're not seeing something that you want to create, let's say a vortex core for the moment, you can always get to them independently of the icon shown through the Create pull down. That same Create pull down is found if I do a right click, and the Create pull down on the right click menu gives me the same list of information. Across here we have other options such as query, view, so we can turn off triads, perspective, auxiliary clipping, and so forth. We also have our tools, just like in ANSYS 9, where we can turn on the visibility of the different tools, as well as being able to bring back our Welcome to window and Views Manager down here in the window. The case will show us all our currently loaded cases, as well as the ability to add and to replace certain cases. Under the help, there are some ANSYS 10 transition guides here which are new that will take you to a transition guide to get from ANSYS 9 to ANSYS 10, as well as being able to log technical support straight through the window here, as well as finding the user manuals and the getting started and notes, for example, in here. So the menu bar across the top is pretty much unchanged with the addition of this Create pull down that allows us an addition to access all the Create options in ANSYS. Across the top here we have feature menus. These feature menus are more or less constant. On the middle section here we can add in different Create options. We can also customize this by doing a right click and customize feature toolbar. Here we can actually specify the order of those icons by selecting on one and changing its up or down position in the list. We can also take options that we may use and replace them in and add them in here as well. So you can see here we've added the shock regions in, and they'll show up between the interactive probe and the viewports. One other new item in ANSYS 10 allows us to populate user-defined tools all the way up into the main toolbar as well. So down here I've got some tools that we've created, and I can populate them straight up to the main window, and they can live up here just like an icon like everything else. So we have mirror image, a little tool that we wrote that now can be populated up along the main window here and acts just as it does along with the other main items within ANSYS. Down the left-hand side of ANSYS now, we have some new layouts. We've got a parts window here, where we have the ability to look at all of our parts. The parts object tree has a lot more information in it now. We can see what it's colored by. We can see different IDs. We can see whether it's shown or not, so we can hide different parts, and we can see directly whether the part has been visualized or not. Again, we can do a right click here and say customize, and we can actually customize the columns that are shown within that parts attribute. So for example, we could put in representation, how the part is represented, scale factors, failed variable. These are all things that we can put into the list for the part object that we can then utilize to organize and have a quick view of our parts. Further from that concept, we have these object lists down here. Currently I'm showing variables tab. In here we've got scalars, we've got vectors, constants, tensors. They all live down here. You can see here we put up pressure. We can see that it's activated, and this is the min and max within the domain at the current time step. Same thing down here for constants, the current value at the current time step, vectors, and so forth. And again, if we do a right click and customize, we can specify different attributes to be shown in the columns of this particular variable object list. We also have object lists for annotations, plots and queries, and viewports. So those that have come from EnSight 9 will notice that there are no more modes in EnSight 10. The modes are really replaced by these tabbed abilities to go through and edit the different attributes of the plots and queries. Rather than changing to a mode of plot and query, we simply have it listed as a tab here. Along the bottom part of EnSight, we see we have a quick output of, this is really kind of information back to the user. The current information, if I scroll over different parts, will give me information about that particular part that we have loaded. If we're saving animations, the current frame that we're saving will be shown down here as well. Across the bottom, we have sort of a views toolbar where we can change things like shading, highlighting, putting the grid, overlaying the grid on the model as well as quick visibilities for our tools and our ability to actually edit the tool location here as well. On the right hand side we have the views option, so we can reset the view, we can fit, we can kind of reinitialize, and we have quick presets for the XYZ orientations here as well. If we continue on back up to the top of the window here on the right hand side, we have what we call a quick action bar. Now the items up here actually dynamically change depending upon what we have selected. At the moment I'm going to choose a part in the model, and these are all part attributes up here that I can change or adjust. These are kind of the adjectives that we change the attributes of how this entity is displayed, its color, its width, where it's viewed, how it's displayed or represented, mirroring, displacements, so forth. Now as we change to something else, let's select a text annotation here. These items change to the text attributes here. And these attributes that are shown are actually for this particular annotation string that we have. We can see that its height is actually 50. These icons will change based off their actual attributes. We're left justified. So if we change this to be center justified, we can see this is now center justified in our little icon view. We can change sizes to presets here. We can also change shadowing and the rotation here as well. Have the visibility and color as well, all pretty standard. Now if we choose a legend, for example, we now have the attributes of the legend up here. So this quick action bar up here really changes based off what we have selected and allows us to do some quick actions to that particular part. This is really in conjunction with doing the right click. We have options. Let me move this over here so you can see it. For the right click we have a very quick presets, if you like, for changing things that are very common to change. Up here along the quick action bar we have further ability to change that and see, get a visual representation back of what the actual attributes are. And again, as we choose, for example, a plotter, let's choose the plotter down here, we'll get plotter attributes that we can change. If we choose and select the viewport, we now have viewport attributes up here that we can change. So again, rather than having modes in EnSight where we have to decide what we're going to edit and then edit that within a particular mode, we're really gotten rid of the modes in EnSight 10 and replaced them with this quick action option here, which is relative to what we have selected in the main viewport. So as we select annotations, we get annotation attributes. As we select parts, we get part attributes up here as well. And finally, we see that in this particular model, we have a transient simulation, so time is now front and center and always available to us. This area here will also be tiled or tabbed over with regards to either keyframes or flipbooks, and as a way to really looking at animations within EnSight up here. We can play backwards through time, forwards through time, or just advance one or go back one step at a time here as well. Now in terms of layout, you saw that we can adjust the size of these particular part attribute windows. We can also tear them off. This might be quite helpful. We can tear this off if we have a large list we can make this list and we can place it independent of the EnSight window so that it does not in any way kind of lose our real estate that we're trying to use in our viewport here. So we can pull any of these options off. We can stuff them back in here. We also can move these items around. We have these little dotted vertical bars that indicate that we can move information about. We can also pick it up and drag it and drop it on a particular different location within EnSight. So if we want to have a different layout of how things are shown, perhaps we want parts over here as well, we could add parts over here and really view EnSight in a different manner that may be more useful to how you want to work. So we can have big lists of parts over here as well as big lists of variables, and they don't necessarily have to really live in the same place. They can live differently, they can live in different locations or separately to the window here as well. These options are saved automatically when you exit EnSight, so if you got some layout that you like, simply when you file exits, EnSight records where those different options are and where the different layouts are, and automatically presents that with you when you read back in again. The order and the orientation of these icons up here, if I do a customize feature toolbar, these can actually be saved out to a file. These aren't necessarily saved when you exit EnSight. We can save them here. We can also restore back to a default view here as well, to the default set of icons across the top. So that's a quick overview of the layout of the GUI in EnSight 10 with regards to the new items, the layouts of the different options up here across the feature menu bar, as well as the object lists that we have, and the ability to customize the options and their locations within the session of EnSight to help you further maximize your efficiency in using EnSight.